I worked at IBM and Microsoft and Google at the time where those companies were changing the world. At Google, I first ran half of Google globally for 7 years. And then I was Chief Business Officer of Google X, the innovation side of Google. Jobs that everyone dreams of having, if you ask me. I'm an Egyptian, born and raised in Egypt, public school, public university in Egypt, not supposed to be Chief Business Officer of Google X. Some of us get lucky and get a lot of money and a lot of fame and a lot of fancy toys and, beautiful partners and whatever. And these are the cursed ones. As long as you associate with those things, no amount of them is enough, ever. I say most people would not actually be able to say those things don't matter until they've tried them. And I acknowledge that, okay? But some of us try them and get addicted to them, and then they spend a lifetime chasing something they don't need. And so I wrote the notes for Solve for Happy in 2011. And I said to myself, I'll sit down and write it. And then I went to work, and I closed another $1 billion deal here, and I signed another this, and helped develop another product, and completely forgot about it. And then it would nag me a year later, and I completely forgot about it, and so on. And I think, in a way, life decided enough. You have a role to play. And it's quite funny because most people that I know who have found a path to an important purpose, if you want, found it through hardship. Hardship only happens when life wants one of two things for you. It wants you to either learn something different, something that you're missing, something that will complete your path or your role in life, or it will want you to change direction. So life sometimes will tell you, hey, do you want to take a left turn here? And you go like, no, not interested, I'm going straight. And then life goes, but it's important that you take a left turn here. It's not all about you. And you say, no, I'm not. I'm just going there. And then eventually life nudges you, a shoulder kick, and says, we need you there. I actually was not defective. I actually had a moment in my life where I was very, very happy, okay? And in my software code mind, I thought, okay, so there is a bug in the code. Something changed along the path, okay? And I can work on that. And so basically, I started to work on what is now known as the happiness equation, which at the time was a lot more complex than what I published. It was 19 different parameters with logs and, so cosines and constants and so on. And then I would take that very complex cerebral analysis of what happiness is, and I would show it to Ali. And Ali would look at me. Ali was so wise, Habibi was so wise. So he would look at me and he, at age 8, he would look at me and go like, oh my God, that's so smart, Papa. Like he's entertaining me, really. And then he would ask me a couple of questions. And then, just to entertain the conversation. And then he would say, and I quote, he would say, you could have just asked me, okay? And then he would say whatever it is that I told him in 4 to 8 words that were all heart, 100% heart. And somehow that completely balanced me. But between me and him, I actually found something that works. I knew in my cerebral approach, mathematical approach to life, the algorithm that caused happiness or unhappiness. And then I found through his practice a model that I can actually implement. Put the two together, and then I became the happiest person, Like, honestly, until today, it's shocking how calm and contented and grateful for life I am, even in a year like this. This has been the toughest year of my life. And the reason simply is because I could manage to bring those two together, the heart and the understanding, the mechanical side of the human machine. And then he died. So around 10 years ago, my wonderful son, who was 21 at the time, was diagnosed with a simple appendix inflammation. And yeah, it was supposed to be 4 minutes in the operating room. It ended up being 4 hours, and then we lost him. And when he left, I think basically life was saying enough. Start doing what you're supposed to do. And so I attempted to write my first book to summarize what we learned together, me and him, about happiness, Solve for Happy, which was a massive success, massive hit. The book was for a mission that I called 10 Million Happy at the time. It was an attempt to get what Ali taught me to spread to 10 million people. And through my mathematical brain, I thought that if we get to 10 million people through 6 degrees of separation over 72 years was my accurate calculation, a tiny bit of his essence will have spread to everyone on earth, which was a beautiful, beautiful ambition and beautiful dream. Honestly, the way my publisher on the first book put it was like, this is the biggest test of the model. Like life was testing me to find out if I learned. No, I don't think it was. I think it was my wake-up call. It was my assignment. I think Ali left because I was that very successful executive in the fast lane, unable to notice how much difference what we discovered could bring to the world. I was a grieving father writing Solve for Happy. No publisher would have ever published it. Okay? The reason they published Solve for Happy is because I was the grieving chief business officer of Google X, writing about happiness algorithmically. Okay? That role of being of appearing at Google X was enriching for me, but it was life preparing me to say, hey, we've paid you in advance. 16 cars is way more than enough. Okay? So wake up and understand that the pain that you now feel as Ali left is a pain that's shared by billions of people. Life was simply saying, enough being selfish. Enough. Like, wake up. You have to go left. We want you to be there. And when you follow that, amazing things happen. Believe it or not, I've never felt more rewarded. I've never felt happier. I know it sounds really weird, but I lose Ali, and you lose someone that you love. It never goes away. I hope none of our listeners ever goes through the pain, right? But I've never been happier, and it's really quite shocking. It's quite shocking because somehow that combined life story, including the loss of happiness of Ali, is actually worth it. Is actually worth it. For probably 4 years after Ali died, every single morning I would wake up and the first thought that hits me is Ali died. Every single morning, and such a painful thought. Very often I would burst crying, right? And then I think a year in, I suddenly realized I'm missing the truth. And the truth is, yes, Ali died. We know, we agree, Ali died. But the truth is Ali lived. And somehow my mind forgets that. And every time my brain will tell me Ali died, I'll say, yes, brain, you told me like 6,000 times already. We agree he died, but Ali also lived. Okay? When my brain told me Ali died, the only image I constantly had in my mind was him on the intensive care table. Okay? When my brain tells me Ali lived, I remember all of those incredible moments, all of those blessings. And somehow you learn to stop being entitled. Stop being entitled. Life has never signed a service level agreement with you. Okay? You suddenly see the reality that I have done nothing to earn his presence. Okay? I should be dancing in the streets for having him. You know, as an engineer, if you got me your car and it was leaking oil, I would look at it and I would go like, oh, hose is broken, change the hose, let's move forward, right? A therapist, on the other hand, will sit you down and say, tell me when you bought that car, okay? How did you drive it in the first couple of weeks? What happened? How did you abuse it? How did the hose break? Okay? Both have merit to them, remember. Huh? One of them is saying, we don't really care how the hose broke. Let's make sure that we fix it so that you can move forward. The other will say, but if you fix it and you continue to do the same behavior, you're going to break it again. Okay? Interestingly, both of them, however, are basically trying to find that hardware, okay? That neural network that's completely defining who you are. Now, whenever you find it, whichever way, okay, all that it takes is that you keep trying to repeat actions that are against that neural network, okay? So if you tell me I'm not good enough, and I start to find ways to show you, I cannot tell you, because people don't believe what they're told. They have to be experiencing something. If I keep showing you ways in which you are good enough, okay? If I try explaining to you that, you know, good enough for what? Nobody is good enough for everything. Okay? We've suddenly thought that we can beat death. We cling onto life so, viciously. We don't want to let it go. That we count life in years. How stupid is that? You count life in living. Life is worth it when you've lived it. And you may have lived it in 10 years or in 20 or in 50 or in 70, or you may live to be 105 and suffered every single day of them. Which is a better life? Right? I'll tell you openly, as we're speaking right now, when you asked me to talk about Ali, I felt the pain. When you asked me to talk about, neuroplasticity, I wasn't thinking about Ali. I didn't feel the pain of Ali's absence, right? You have to turn something into a thought, turn that thought into a story, bring it up in your mind, dwell on it to feel unhappy. No, rumination is working for you. So you see, the way I describe the brain sometimes comes across as its enemy. It's not. It's your friend gone wild. Okay? So your brain is ruminating for the simple reason that you're not listening. Okay. Right? So if I had a friend of mine that would take appointments with her brain. So her brain will go like, oh, my boyfriend did this and he said that and he's annoying. And she would simply say, okay, brain, I got it. You're upset about, my boyfriend. We're going to talk about this at 6:30 after work. And believe it or not, if you just do that, your brain will go like, okay, 6:30 is fine. What do you need now? That report? Let's work on the report. It's funny, isn't it, that nothing is really good or bad? That's really quite interesting. Some things are painful, okay? But good or bad is a flux in time. Some things will feel bad at first and then feel good afterwards. Some things will feel good at first and then feel bad afterwards. Some things are good and bad at the same time. Some things are neither. But nothing, you can never call anything good or bad. It's quite interesting when you really think about it. There was this fable that they teach in my part of the world about someone that goes to the scholar that teaches religion and spirituality and goes like, you're the teacher for all of us, tell me the secret of happiness. And the scholar says, I'm sitting in a very simple place on a simple mat. He says, no, I'm not the best person to teach you this. You need to go to my friend and he will teach you. And so he goes to his friend, and his friend is living in a massive palace. Everything is gold, marble everywhere. And he refuses to meet him, okay? And so he goes back to his scholar and he says, so what are you saying? The secret of happiness is to have a palace with marble? And he said, no, the secret of happiness is that my friend has a palace with everything in it, but if he lost it all tomorrow, he wouldn't blink, okay? I have this mat that I'm sitting on, and if you took it from underneath me, I will kill you, right? It's that attachment to things that tortures us, okay? It's that attachment to images, to promises of the modern world that truly tortures us, believe it or not. So the luckiest of all of us are those who own the world, but the world doesn't own them. But you can see that the first 25 years of my life, my adult life, were completely dedicated to my selfish me. Ended up finding myself critical of everything, bitter about everything, very unhappy about everything. And so, interestingly, I had all of the money in the world, all of the fancy cars in the world. At the time, I had 16 cars in my garage. If you're miserable because life forced something on you, you sort of can blame that thing. I was miserable and I had everything, okay? And that gives you a sense of despair, that you're not able to get out of that misery regardless of how much money you pour on it. And the modern world promises you that money will get you out of it. You know, go on a nice vacation or, you know, buy a fancy car or whatever. All that I found about happiness, about calm, about peace, about contentment was in spiritual books. Okay, at the time, remember, I'm an old man. You know, you could barely get someone that will talk to you in a way that is anything other than the older scriptures, the practice, the yoga, the meditation, the, you know, chanting, and none of that registered for me at all. I put in the effort. I watched every documentary that was available. Probably there were 3, right? I read every book. I attended every course that told me I was going to be happy. I couldn't get it. You're happy by default. You're born happy, and then they send you away, and you know, they teach you how to be fit for the modern world, and so you become fit for the modern world. You score well in your exams, you sit silently in class, you start talking about nonsense synergies and 3-letter words, and you just repeat what you're told, and you lose your ability to find happiness. There is no way you can ever live without pain in your heart for losing a child. But when you really get it, there's absolutely no way you're going to avoid that pain. Every single one of us is with pain. Every single one of us will lose someone they love. The mathematics of it, within 70 years, everyone, maximum 70 years, everyone that ever popped into your life will disappear. Okay? 70, 76, I think, is now life expectancy. Which basically means that death is part of life. It's just part of the video game. Okay? And if you see it that way, you realize that life is what matters, it's not death. Okay? How you navigate this video game until you put your controller down too, that's what matters. And you know, as painful as it sounds, Ali left us 10 years ago, and they passed like that. Okay? And yeah, maybe I have 10, 15, 20, 25 more to live. They will pass like that too. Okay? You see, this is the whole idea. If you really anchor yourself in the reality of this illusion that we call a video game, spiritual teachings like Buddhism, for example, will talk about that duality of this world, where someone like me wakes up every morning with no objective, but to make this illusory video game better for everyone. And at the same time, understand that it's just a video game, that this is not really me. This is not really me. My real self is sitting on a red sofa somewhere, observing all of this, unaffected by its ups and downs, by its pains, by its losses. Very, very, very difficult to get your head around it. But when you do, you wake up and you do the absolute best that you can, not really thinking that the game is unfair, because the game is not even here at all. When you upgrade a computer, you upgrade the software. You install a new operating system. When you upgrade your brain, okay, you're literally reconfiguring the hardware. And most people don't understand that. In your brain, anything that you use is used by connecting a few neurons. Let's just simplify it. A few neurons fire together for you to tap your finger. Okay? If you keep tapping your finger for an hour a day, your brain will say this is a very useful neural network. Those neurons wire together. They become almost a permanent piece of hardware that's available to you all the time, so that your brain doesn't have to re-establish that network every time you tap your finger. It's just available to it all the time. Because you're doing that, you're not going to scratch your ears very much, because you're using your fingers to tap them, so the neural network that scratches your ears disappears. Right? And because of that, every single one of us humans literally runs on a very different piece of hardware, okay? And that hardware is almost like in the old days when we coded computers before all of the programming languages, is low-level code. It's almost like designing a computer for every human. It's very adaptable as a computer. You can keep changing it, right? But the problem is, if I gave you a belief when you were 6 years old, your brain spends every day that it believes that concept looking for evidence for it, okay? And so every time a trauma that happens when you're a child, I'm not lovable, okay? You get a trauma that's called I'm not lovable, and then your brain searches every single morning when you're at school, when you're in the bus station, when you're doing this, when you're doing that, for evidence to prove that concept, okay? And if you search for something, you find it. And so every time you find it, you're engraving that hardware even more. I'm not lovable, I'm not lovable, I'm not lovable, okay? And eventually you end up, unable to change it. It becomes part of who you are. It becomes the lens through which you see the world. Einstein himself tells you past, present, and future is nothing more than a stubbornly persistent illusion, okay? You put all of that together and you suddenly realize that Ali never left, okay? Ali's physical form decayed. So will mine, by the way. That's the only certainty you have in life, is that one day my physical form will decay like his, and my non-physical form, my spiritual consciousness, spirit, soul, whatever, will persist exactly where he is. So in a very interesting way, I look at my relationship with Ali when he was alive, is he was the master video gamer. I sat next to him on the red sofa, and we played together, two avatars on that little screen, okay? That same image is exactly the reality of our souls, sitting on a red sofa somewhere, animating those physical avatars that are navigating this physical world. And then somehow, at a point in time, he puts his controller down. I'm still holding my controller, or maybe he's holding it every now and then because he was a better gamer than I am, right? And yet, while his avatar disappeared from the game, he's still sitting next to my non-physical form. His non-physical form is next to my non-physical form on the red sofa, that's looking at all of this ridiculous video game that we play and saying, well done, Papa, you're doing really well. You're actually making a difference. No, turn a little left. I said turn left.
Marek Health made this documentary and this interview possible, and they're trying to help support the cause of inspiring change. If you're ready to take control of your health, go to marekhealth.com and use code Mulligan for 10% off. The link's down below.